Let's bring in Alan Orr. He's an immigration lawyer and former president of the American Immigration Lawyers Association. Alan, thanks for joining us. This is very direct language to hear from the Secretary of State. Yeah, no problem. But you hear him say lunatic, and you hear him talking kind of in somewhat hyperbole sometimes. Legally, what defines lunatic here? And do we know the specifics on what lines, legal lines, they're saying were crossed, or is it pretty nebulous?
It's very nebulous. As a matter of fact, in all of my time in law school and 20-some years of practice, I've never had the legal term lunatic defined for me. And therefore, it sort of speaks to the arbitrariness of his own personal view of someone, which is not how our law operates.
And protests against Khalil and his detainment have been widespread. So have protests against other detainments as well. Let's just listen really quick to one protester told our cameras.
His case, to me, and I think to all Americans, should represent the fight for our civil liberties right now. The Trump administration is clearly trying to strip us of our right to free speech. So this is something that should touch everyone who cares about that right.
So legally, what is free speech? Who is entitled to it? Are visa holders who are here under that visa entitled to the same due process and things that we take for granted in the Constitution?
Yeah, yes, they are. And I think the first thing to say is that those students are doing the right thing, which is they're standing up for our Constitution. So it's the Constitution, and then there's the laws by Congress, and then there's the enforcement by the president. And this is where we're having a disconnect right now. There's a case, a Reno case, 1993, that settled this issue with family separation and said that immigrants are entitled to due process, which means they're also entitled to the other first 5 rights in our Constitution. So that is indisputable right now. I mean, Justice Scalia, one of the most conservative justices on the court, also in an interview said they were entitled to these rights. Now, the difference is, and one of the problems that we have right now is the news is sort of grouping everybody together. Mr. Khalil is a green card holder married to a U.S. citizen. A green card holder has a higher standard to revoke their status in the United States than someone who's just a visa holder. So a visa holder is at the whim of the State Department in some realms, and it hasn't really had that challenge. It's never been handled this way before. But a green card holder has a right to all due process and before a judge, before he can sort of pull their status and be detained. And that's what's so alarming about his case.
And what are they using? What language, what legal language are they using? Is it the actions that are contrary to American interests, or stipulations that are inside of these visas and the applications and the entire process that are allowing them to do this so quickly?
It's the vague standards and the regulations that are allowing him to sort of say this at this point in time, but he's not before a judge yet. And that's really one of the things that we need to talk about. A lot of the actions that are being taken by the executive branch are not legal and are not law, and they need to be balanced by our judicial branch, which is why he is in court right now. The first battle was over jurisdiction. They removed him from New Jersey and brought him to Louisiana like they did the other cases because they're forum shopping to get judges that potentially will agree with them on their basis of removal. That's not appropriate in the law. So that's one of the first mistakes. The second sort of issue we have is they're not sort of informing them of exactly what actions they took that would have violated their right to be in the country. Many of the actions that these individuals took were in 2024, which is before President Trump, definitely before Secretary Rubio. So therefore, sort of this retroactive application of law, really we call ex facto application, isn't the basis of our legal system, and is quite arbitrary and should be troubling for everyone for some time later in the future, almost a year in the future, to go back and say these individuals are guilty of something that they were not guilty of at that time.
Alan Orr, really appreciate your insight into this. Thank you so much. And tonight, a fresh lawsuit against